Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz. Welcome once again to our program. And we are honored today to have with us as our very special guest to be interviewed, Dr. Aliya Jones. She is the Deputy Secretary and Head of the Behavioral Health Administration of the Maryland Department of Health. Dr. Jones, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much for having me, David. Good to meet you.
So, no, it's our pleasure. So I know one of the things that you want to talk about and put out there to the community, and this program goes primarily to business and civic leaders and the like. Many employers are, will be watching. I know you want to. We hear a lot about the opioid crisis. You're an expert. And what do we need to know? And particularly, what do we need to know as businesses and business owners and employers about how it's affecting us and our employees and the like? So a pretty broad, open-ended question, but I know you're expert on this. So give it a shot if you don't mind.
Not a problem, David. And thank you for your very, very good question. What we want people to know, even though everyone is very much appropriately focused on COVID and how that's changed our world and our daily lives, we want people to remember that there is still another crisis that we continue to contend with in the country and certainly in the state of Maryland as well. And that is the opioid crisis. Opioid overdoses, opioid deaths, opioid use has not gone down or has not gone away, even though we are all very hyper-focused, and appropriately so, on COVID. Opioid overdose rates remain near historic highs in the state of Maryland, as they are in the nation. Nationally, there was a 30% increase in opioid overdoses in 2021, which is frightening. We had over 100,000 people die from opioid overdoses. And in the state of Maryland, when we look at 2020, which is the most comprehensive data that we had approximately 2,800 people lose their lives to opioid overdoses, which is approximately 7 people every single day. And unfortunately, in 2021, that number certainly did not improve. In the first 6 months of 2021, we lost 1,217 people to opioid overdoses, which was similar to the number that we lost in 2020. So this is a very significant problem that has only gotten worse because of the pandemic. And it's just important for businesses to continue to be aware of this issue.
So, but what should business leaders know and do? I mean, how can we help?
Business leaders are critical and important members of our community and our societies. As a business leader and as someone who led a private practice myself at one point in time, I know that you all are in a position to not only raise awareness about the extent of this problem, but also to be a part of the solution. And if you wonder, well, what are the resources that I have? What am I supposed to do? That is where the Maryland Department of Health and other organizations can be supportive of your efforts. Business leaders should know that opioid use disorders are common and that they are treatable, and that recovery is indeed possible. As business leaders, as employers, you need to know that if you have people who are in your workforce who have opioid use disorders, and many of you do, you should know that treatment is possible and people can definitely get better. There are very effective medications to treat opioid use disorders, including methadone, buprenorphine, and naltrexone, which are FDA approved for the treatment of these conditions. However, you're not going to be treating opioid use disorders, but we want you to be supportive of people who have opioid use disorders, supportive of their recovery process, and most importantly is to recognize when someone is in distress from the signs of an opioid overdose, and to know what to do and to take steps to help reverse an opioid overdose if you witness it. And that is where businesses certainly can be heroes, like we've asked all of our citizens to be a hero and save a life and have naloxone available if someone is experiencing an opioid overdose. Naloxone is a harmless prescription medication that can safely and effectively reverse an opioid overdose. It's been used by doctors and paramedics for decades, and it can be included. And we're asking and encouraging businesses to include naloxone in their first aid kits and in their medical emergency protocols, so that if someone is on their premises and is experiencing an opioid overdose, they can be a hero and save a life.
So let me ask you about that, because I know that's important to you to have in the workplaces throughout Maryland. No different maybe than a number of businesses of late have defibrillators and all kinds of other things. So given the fact that, as you mentioned, it's a prescription medication, I guess I would ask you this: how does an employer go about including it in their quote unquote first aid kit? And then how does one go about administering it and knowing that it indeed needs to be administered?
Excellent questions. So we're encouraging people to take a look at a resource that the Behavioral Health Administration developed in 2019 called the Naloxone Electronic Toolkit. Naloxone Electronic Toolkit. We created this toolkit as a response to what we were hearing from local businesses, public entities like libraries and others who wanted to know how they could share life-saving information about how to combat the opioid crisis and what to do if someone were experiencing an opioid overdose. So if anyone goes to visit the website, How to Administer Naloxone, it's pretty straightforward, how to administer naloxone.maryland.gov, you will access this toolkit, and the toolkit will give you critical information about how to recognize an overdose, where to get naloxone, and how to use naloxone, and not only in written form, but in a video as well, a brief video that shows you how to administer this medication. Our toolkit also includes brochures and posters that can be downloaded in both English as well as Spanish, and these can be placed anywhere employees or the public gathers to share information and resources. And this toolkit can also be linked on your public-facing website as a business, just to show that you support businesses being a part of the solution and helping to save lives when necessary, and so that other people can also be comfortable with the concept that this is a real issue, this is a real problem, and it's a problem where all of us can make a difference.
And I assume, Aliya, if you don't mind my using your first name, Dr. Jones, I should say, really. But I assume that this is a challenge, that's very widespread, and that for the most part, employers really don't know who among their employees are likely to be the next person who suffers from this. Would that be accurate?
That is correct. People who have opioid use disorders don't look any different than people who don't have opioid use disorders. This this disorder can affect anyone from any demographic. You name the demographic, and no one is safe. So if you are working with the public, if you're working with the people, then you're working with someone who potentially could have an opioid use disorder.
So though I haven't yet gone to the website and looked at the video, can I assume that your office, your very large department, as noted, serving, I believe, 300,000 Marylanders, if I'm not mistaken. Can I assume that there's a ton of detail there about how one goes about getting it, how one goes about training their employees, and is this much different really from, we've all trained, well, I say we all, probably not all of us, but, my office not that long ago had a training in terms of how to use a defibrillator. And we all remember certainly how to deliver the Heimlich maneuver to employees, colleagues, friends, and family members, and so forth. So now this is the next big thing. Is that right?
That's definitely true. And thank you for using those examples. Well, first of all, let me say that in the toolkit, it includes a training video. So there's a video there. And then also you can certainly reach out to the Maryland Department of Health or to your local health department, and they do trainings as well. Many of them will, I guess they're doing virtual, but some probably are doing on-site trainings as well. However, administering naloxone is easier than doing the Heimlich. It's easier than applying paddles if someone is having chest pain, or you're concerned about someone having had a heart attack or a dysrhythmia of some type, or heart stoppage. And it's more likely to work than any of those things as well. So
Wow.
If you feel comfortable giving someone the Heimlich, if you feel comfortable with the concept of using paddles if someone is down, then there's absolutely no reason why you should feel uncomfortable just squirting a little bit of medication in someone's nose.
Share with us some examples of, clearly this has been done in Maryland in workplaces that already have naloxone on site and where they've been trained, and maybe they're just a little bit ahead of the game than other Maryland employers. I mean, you have evidence, do you not, that lives have literally been saved? Good people have been saved by making sure that workplaces have this and are up to speed.
And there's no question that people in the community are using naloxone for their neighbors, to support their neighbors and their friends who may be having opioid overdoses. The anecdotes that I've heard most directly have been of people who have had naloxone on their person because they got a training done at work. It's typically that people are getting trained at work these days. They've done a training at work and they chose to have naloxone to carry around with them in the event that someone experienced an opioid overdose. And I can tell you several stories of individuals who were walking in certain neighborhoods. For example, I have someone who used to work with me when I was at another organization. I was down in the Lexington market, just grabbing lunch, and noticed that someone was on the ground and non-responsive. And that's an area where it's not uncommon for people to have problems with substance use disorders. And they administered their naloxone, and that person came back right then and there.
Wow.
So those stories actually abound, and there are many of them out there. We just encourage everyone we don't want anyone to experience opioid overdose, but we certainly don't want anyone to die from an opioid overdose if there's somebody else around who can reverse it.
No, incredibly well put. Dr. Jones, I know that you are using the term, which honestly is a new term to me, substance use disorder, as opposed to substance abuse, which is a term that's probably more familiar to a lot of our viewers. So just explain that, because I'm sure it's a lot of thought has been put into the words that you're using.
Certainly. So I'm a psychiatrist, and so the verbiage that it is that I use usually often comes from the language of the field, the language of what our senior most advisors, our textbooks and reference books use. And the diagnostic manual that we use for psychiatry several years ago, when they moved from the DSM-4 to DSM-4-TR, changed the language from drug abuse and drug and addiction to substance use disorder. So it was substance abuse, substance dependence, and then we went on to substance use disorder. It's a less pejorative, less judgmental term, and it also kind of levels the field from when you look at substance use disorder. It means that you don't know where someone is on the spectrum, and it doesn't minimize someone's substance use by just saying they're abusing it. And it's not pejorative by, leaning more towards the concept of addiction and people being, someone being an addict. Those are not words that we use because they are so charged, and they're not helpful in helping people to get engaged with care and treatment. And so we use the term substance use disorder.
So Dr. Jones, just in closing, you're primarily recommending that, I guess, Maryland businesses, large and small, have naloxone on site, and that the folks who work there are generally trained how to use it. Although, as you mentioned, The training is pretty simple, and it's life-saving for those who need it. Any other last messages with regard to this? Because that seems pretty easy and it seems pretty important, but I want to give you the last word.
It's very easy. It's very important. We want business leaders to continue to help us to combat the stigma associated with having a substance use disorder and to be a hero when you have the opportunity to do so, to save a life. We are here to help in any way that we can. We believe that this is a very, very useful resource where you can make a difference, not only in the lives of those who frequent your businesses, but also in the lives of those who you work with, because you never know the situations that people are walking into when they leave your business. And so we just continue to ask you to thank you for your partnership and to ask you for your continued partnership as we try to help people to get onto the road to recovery.
Yeah, no, incredibly well and articulately put. And I guess as you were speaking in your last comments, I kind of realized it's really not just for the employees of businesses, but retail locations and the like. I presumably ought to have it too, because not only do you have your employees there, but you have unknown groups of customers coming in, many of whom may benefit someday by being prepared.
That's correct. The more people who have access to this information, the more people we can help, the more lives we can save. So whether it's, they're administering the medication or having the information on site so that others know that they can have access to this medication as well. We have made Naloxone widely available in the state of Maryland, and we want to make sure that it continues to get into all the hands that need it.
So, Dr. Jones, before we part, I want to ask you again to just review for our viewers how they learn about this, what websites they go to, or what phone numbers they call so that they can follow up on this important message.
Certainly. To access the Naloxone Toolkit, you'll go to howtoadministernaloxone.maryland.gov. And so if you don't know how to spell naloxone, it's Naloxone. So Naloxone. howtoadministernaloxone.maryland.gov. And also you can go to beforeitstoolate.maryland.gov for more information about how we are handling and responding to the opioid crisis in the state of Maryland.
Yeah. So if you don't remember how to spell naloxone, you do remember how to spell before it's too late, hopefully. So as important as the current COVID crisis we're going through is, this is one that preceded it, and and this is one that will likely continue when, who knows when, but hopefully in the not too distant future when COVID is more in the rearview mirror, and but issues related to the opioid crisis are going to be here for a while yet. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And this is David Nevins for Citybiz List. Our guest today has been Dr. Aliya Jones, Deputy Secretary and Head of the Behavioral Health Administration of the Maryland Department of Health. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching. And please follow up on these suggestions. It's important. And enjoy the rest of your day.